Okay, so it's just me, Popcorn Junkie. A number of you lovely subscribers have been asking if we wouldn't mind doing a few more sort of art housey films, or kind of, sort of a bit more, not so mainstream. This one was a tough sell to the family. It's first reformed by the director Paul Schrader, and it revolves around a guilt-ridden rites of passage story for a midlife crisis of belief and a crisis of passion, if you like, for a vicar. So you can probably hear in that why that was a hard sell. It stars Ethan Hawke, who we're all big fans of. We all watched the trailer, we like the look of it, but it's not the kind of film you can skip off merrily with your 10-year-old and your 16-year-old and your lovely wife. So this was a film I saw on my own. Paul Schrader comes with great credits behind him. He was the screenwriter behind films such as Taxi Driver, Raging Bull. He's worked a lot with Martin Scorsese over the years. I've been a big admirer of his work, but he's also directed many films over the years, some famous ones like American Gigolo and Cat People. Patty Hearst he did years ago, which I loved, starring Natasha Richardson. He also made a film called Mishima, which was about the Japanese author. And he's had a sort of renaissance recently. He's made a couple of films. Dog Eat Dog is a kind of curiously whacked out one. And so First Reformed comes along. This film is quite notable in that it uses the sort of square box or a sort of 4:3 ratio, so it doesn't have the CinemaScope look to the film with this sort of strange square. It creates a sort of slightly meditative and sort of concentrated sort of watch. It sort of slows the pace down and you haven't got as much to look around, so it sort of focuses the thought, it focuses the mind. As I say, this is a film starring Ethan Hawke. We know Ethan Hawke from so many things like Good Will Hunting when he was young, but also he stars in a lot of kind of trashy horror films that are kind of entertaining. He's also little known, but he's also an author. So he's a thinker. This is a film about themes of predestination. Why are we on this planet? What is my role in life? What does it mean to bring another life into the world? At the centre of this film, there's Ethan Hawke, who's playing Reverend Toller. He's a very serious, very sort of ascetic character. He runs and is responsible for a beautiful, one of those sort of, shutterboard churches in America. But you realise quite quickly that it's as much a tourist trap, this church, as it is a genuine place of worship. And his congregation is tiny. He's running it as a satellite church for a bigger organisation. He's more like a caretaker, if you like, of something of a not a theme park, but he has when he's taking this family around on a tour of the church, there's this one little area where he says, the hats come in one size, and it's a really nice hat actually. Reverend Ernst Toller is keeping a journal, and he says right at the outset, there's a use of voiceover throughout, that he's going to keep this journal for a year, and then at the end of the year he's going to destroy it. I thought that was really interesting. I was thinking, I wonder if I could keep a journal and then destroy it at the end of the year. Because whenever you write a diary, I don't know if you get this, who are you writing it for? Anyway, this very device reminded me of a film that I remember studying at film college called Diary of a Country Priest, which is a Robert Bresson film. This is a film that I think has had a big impact on Paul Schrader, and so there were some real sort of parallels there. This film, in a sense, just to give you a steer on it, is a little bit like Robert Bresson's Diary of a Country Priest meets Taxi Driver, because quite literally all the themes that Paul Schrader's been dealing with across his career as writer or director of all these movies, they all come to a steaming head in this film in the form of Ethan Hawke's priest, who goes on a bit of a Travis Bickle, character from Taxi Driver, mission, if you like. So on one particular day, Reverend Toller is taking a congregation. One of the female parishioners approaches him and says, will you please talk to my partner? He's an environmentalist. I'm slightly concerned about him. Ethan Hawke goes to meet this chap. They talk about whether it's wise or not for them to bring a girl into the world, because his girlfriend, the parishioner, is pregnant. He talks about environmental issues, and this fires something up in Ethan Hawke's character. We get to hear that he comes from a military background, and that sadly his son even died at war, and this led to the breakdown of his relationship with his wife. And you just start to see, beautifully played by Ethan Hawke, just this almost sort of just slight unpicking of the seams at the edges of what's holding Ethan Hawke together. And so you see in very meditative, very slow, unhurried sequences, him starting to drink a bit more, writing a bit more in his diary. It's revealed to you that he had maybe a sort of spiritual fling of some form with one of the women who also works with the choir. You get a sense of this troubled man. It's also revealed that he's clearly suffering from some kind of terminal cancer or illness. A very uncomfortable scene where he goes to the loo and it's every man's worst nightmare. And he becomes sort of involved in the environmentalist passions of this boyfriend of the parishioner who's approached him. And without sort of giving a spoiler, probably the most dramatic moment in the film occurs, and this is kind of like a gear change in the film. It's the moment where in Taxi Driver, Robert De Niro shaves his hair off and goes on a sort of vigilante mission to clean the streets, rid the streets of vermin. Well, in a similar way, Ethan Hawke goes on a mission and carries the baton for this environmentalist when he discovers that a major oil company is behind his church organisation, is actually one of the sponsors of his church. And so there's this kind of mission and this tussle, this sort of existential, spiritual, theoretical tussle in Ethan Hawke. Again, without giving it away, he considers a pretty dramatic, probably one of the most dramatic solutions. And so you've got within this really almost quaint, beautifully composed, highly stylized, very static film, total madness and total extreme violence festering beneath this Ethan Hawke vicar character. And he plays it so brilliantly that, you know, he's torn to pieces, almost literally, whether he wants to take revenge, whether he wants to correct a wrong. You begin to realise that this is probably a man who's just overwhelmed with the grief of the loss of his child, and there's just a simmering intensity to Ethan Hawke that I think, even if you're not a fan of very static silent films, it's just worth watching this film just for Ethan Hawke's quite remarkable performance. If he's not long listed for an Oscar, then there's no justification. Due to the series of events that occurs, we have a couple of very intimate scenes. We have one particularly intimate scene between Ethan Hawke's character and the original female parishioner who came in for advice about her boyfriend. She effectively lies on top of him and it's just about touching each other, and a sort of magic realist moment happens where they sort of levitate and fly. I mean, at first I was finding this it was a bit sort of cringe, it was a bit sort of, this is a bit, someone needs to have reined this in the edit suite, and yet somehow it kind of worked in a weird way. The only real problem I have with this film is the ending. I thought, and if you see it, let me know what you think, I thought we were definitely going one way. Then I thought we were definitely going another way for a very specific reason. He looks out the window and notices something, you know what I mean if you've seen it. And then it went very strange. It went a little bit Last Temptation of Christy, which of course Paul Schrader was also the writer on that. For a very experienced filmmaker, it felt like he almost had an embarrassment of riches when it came to which end he could choose, and he couldn't really decide on which ending he wanted. And before you knew it, we were sort of wrapping up in a very quick manner with a situation that was surreal, yes, satisfactory as to what we'd sort of seen developing and what we'd invested in, not really. Did it ruin the rest of the film? Didn't ruin the rest of the film, I wouldn't say not see it, but it was a very confused ending. And it was almost like Paul Schrader knew this might be the last film he'll make, and he had to tip everything into, meaning-wise. You know, he had to tip every meaning you could possibly bring into whatever this final sequence was. So I'd say this is a film definitely worth watching. If you're a cinephile, if you're a film buff like me, if you want to watch a meditative, really intensely drawn portrait of a troubled priest type character played beautifully by Ethan Hawke, check this out. There are some real revelatory moments, really shockingly horrific moments. It was like doing a meditation with a couple of moments of Taxi Driver thrown in. But if you do watch it, let me know what you think in the comments below.